Welcome to People Tech, the podcast of WorkforceAI.news. I'm Mark Pfeffer. My guest today is Brad Smith, the Chief Science Officer at meQuilibrium. Their software helps users better understand why they're stressed and how they can be successful. It also helps employers understand how they can support their workforce. How does AI help with all that? What do employees think? We'll talk about that and more on this edition of People Tech. Hey Brad, it's good to see you. meQuilibrium is really about helping employers keep track of mental health, their workforce's mental health. Can you talk to me a bit about how data factors into that?
Yeah, so at multiple levels, data factors into how we care for people. And I would revise your description in the politest possible fashion by saying we help employers manage their workforce, but what we're also doing is helping individuals manage their mental health. So it's a two-level thing. So and that actually foreshadows what I would say about how data are used. On the individual level, data are used to personalize. So we have an assessment that employees take up front. It's about 60 questions. It takes 5 minutes to do, really quick. That assessment then feeds into an AI-driven algorithm that creates a personalized user journey. So if you're really struggling in a specific area, say empathy, or with stress management, or you're struggling with work-life balance, you're going to get learning opportunities in your personalized user journey that are upfront, relevant to your needs. And so if you look across a very large sample of users, hundreds of thousands, literally no two of those journeys are going to be alike because of the assessment data that feeds into that personalization algorithm. The second way data are used, well, there's multiple ways, but at another level, data are used at the population level. So we have a population resilience management tool that we call Workforce Intelligence. And MECU Workforce Intelligence basically allows not every manager in the organization, but the folks who are generally sort of managing the MECU relationship, managing that relationship to be able to look across the organization and see risks. So what's the depression risk? What's the anxiety risk? What are the various other risks that we see across the organization? And most companies provide us an eligibility file. That eligibility file allows us to segment and cut and slice and dice data. So if you're interested in what's happening in a specific business unit, or in a demographic group or at a specific work site, you're able to actually drill down and see sort of what are the strengths of the folks that work in that area, as well as what are the challenges. So to recap, data are used at an individual level to drive that personalization algorithm at the population level to help manage, and ultimately you can direct other interventions at the population level. So that's the two key ways data are used in meQuilibrium.
So can you give me an example of how this would work and what it would lead to? What's the kind of issue that a manager or an employer would be looking for, and what would they do with the information?
Yeah, so given an opening, I'll give you two examples. One is a sort of mental health example. Mental health is obviously important. We've sort of had a heightened appreciation for mental health since the dawn of COVID, and the rates of depression and anxiety like more than doubled. Employers face, especially those who are self-insured, face pretty significant costs when the rate of mental health concerns goes up like that. So, and it's just the right thing to do to help employees take better care of their mental health. So it's not only a financial motive. But an employer could use MECU, obviously on the individual level, it's working in the background to help people with the things they struggle with, given the personalization that we talked about earlier. But we'd also be able to, an employer would be able to drive what we call a campaign. So we have evidence-based campaigns that help with burnout, with managing stress, a whole variety of topics that would be relevant to improving mental health. Those can be targeted either organization-wide, if it's something that's a concern across the whole organization, or it could be targeted sort of more narrowly. There's a business unit that's really struggling. The manufacturing operation is really struggling. So one sense of that MEQ might be used is to sort of address mental health concerns. Another way that meQuilibrium might be used is to address performance concerns. So we often talk about what we do is being at the intersection of well-being and performance. So the former example being a well-being example, the performance example being what's coming. And that example might be we talk to a lot of companies these days that are really struggling with change management. The aphorism that I've heard said is that change has never been faster than it is now, and it'll never be as slow as it is now in the future. So a lot of organizations are really struggling with change, and they're struggling with change in large part because change is tough, right? People are averse to change naturally. Most people are averse to change. So what can we do? What can we recognize the characteristics that are supportive of being not change averse, being change ready? Those are things like problem solving. They're like self-confidence. Their empathy for understanding what's happening in other folks' lives. And if we can identify where those characteristics and others are lacking, again, we could deploy a campaign, or MEQ can work in the background to help boost problem-solving skills, to boost change management skills. So both at the well-being side as well as the performance side, data can be leveraged to help a company drive better results and a better bottom line.
meQuilibrium existed before the current AI rush. How did AI impact your product and your services and your basic vision?
Yeah, so we did exist before sort of the big hit of generative AI. I would say we were AI before AI was cool, would be one way to say it. At the very beginning, what we're trying to really do is translate what was a paradigm that was one-on-one. One of our founders is a Penn psychologist, Penn trained, University of Pennsylvania trained psychologist. He worked out a lot of the protocols, a lot of the assessment tools and education tools as part of his doctoral research at UPenn, and then was in the process of implementing that in a face-to-face seminar training kind of mode. Obviously not very scalable. If you have 20,000 workers, you could neither have enough time or enough money to put 20,000 people through face-to-face training. So the goal really was to help identify a way that we could scale what we want to do, which is build resilience, build performance, to scale it on to very large, even 200,000 employees. How can we scale it? And so we wanted to do it so it was not a one size fits all. So it wasn't just a LMS, learning management system course you took, but it felt like the program knew you. And so we took very seriously implementing tools, AI tools that are not generative AI, but machine learning tools and other rules-driven algorithms that in the early days help us build that personalization. As technology has improved, as computing capacity has improved, we've been able to take advantage of other things like recommendation engines, the kinds of things that you see at Amazon that seem to know what you bought last time and what you might like to buy. Sometimes they do a good job. They could do a better job than they probably do. But we've been able to leverage machine learning to put recommendation algorithms in the product. We have a mood tracker that we have recently built out with AI. So it recognizes patterns. It's got a pattern recognition tool, and it can help you see if there are things going on in your life that on every Tuesday you seem to have a difficult mood, or in the mornings your moods tend to be lower. But then most recently, we've been trying to harness the generative AI tools that have become widely available in a safe way. So machine learning tools, the rules-driven algorithms, the things that we adopted early are very low risk. If Amazon gives you a product that you think is comically not relevant, you just pass on and you go to the next thing. And in the case of generative AI, if you put in a topic about how to cope with family stress, and you get served up a bunch of articles on losing a child or on grief that aren't relevant, that's a lot. Or the chatbot says back to you something that is inappropriate because it doesn't have the right guardrails around it. That's a lot more dangerous than getting the wrong article recommendation that you might see in the product. So we've been very careful, very circumspect in terms of implementing the generative AI tools in the product in a way that is very safe, probably under what the current technology would support, but we are given the care that we're entrusted with by our customers. We've been very careful in terms of how we do that.
Life is too short not to work on solving cool problems with interesting people, and recruiting allows us to do both. I'm Brando, host of the Rebel TA podcast, a show where we share stories with people and talent leaders who are on a mission to empower the candidate-employer relationship in the future of work.
Hey, I'm Katie Van Horn.
And I'm Jackie Clayton.
We're your hosts of the Inclusive AF podcast, where we take on DEI, leadership, and HR without all the corporate fluff.
That's right. We've got decades of experience, a lot of opinions, and zero tolerance for performative anything.
Every week, we dig into what it really takes to build inclusive workplaces with honesty, strategy, and a few side eyes.
We'll talk about the tough stuff, power dynamics, privilege, what's broken in the system, and how we can all do better.
And don't worry, it's not all heavy. We bring receipts, laughs, and real talk from people actually doing the work.
Think of it as your weekly dose of truth, tips, and a little tea to help you lead with intention and show up for your people.
So if you're ready to push past the buzzwords and get into the actual work of inclusion,
you're in the right place. So subscribe to the Inclusive AF podcast.
New episodes drop every week.
Catch us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll be here breaking it down one inclusive convo at a time.
One of the things I'm curious about is the whole idea of delivering help in the moment. Can you talk about that? I mean, that's become increasingly important to employers in the last couple of years, doing things in the flow of work, in the moment. Why is that important, and how does AI help you with that?
Yeah, it's important because if you miss the opportunity to address a problem in its early stages or a concern in its early stages, then what likely happens in those cases is that it blossoms and not in a positive way. It gets bigger. It consumes more of your mental energy. So addressing it when someone is ready, that's the other thing, right? Like in terms of readiness to change, theories about readiness to change, when someone reaches out for help and it indicates that they're ready to think about changing or changing the way they behave or the way they think, we don't want to miss that opportunity because it's the key place where someone's ready to change. You want to take advantage of that and give them the tools that they need to do to change the way that they think or the way that they feel or the way that they believe. So that's sort of the background about why it's critical to act when someone is ready.
Mm-hmm.
What we've done at meQ is first we leveraged generative AI tools to build a set of responses and to prompts that we tracked people being concerned and interested in. We call it Ask meQ. It has a couple of different starting points. It has an I want to starting point. It has an I feel starting point. So I want to could be as I want to stop feeling so anxious. The I feel starting point might turn into a completion that's I feel stressed out. And so those stems, those sort of prompts are developed from both from expert knowledge as well as what we've seen people type into the search engine over the years at meQ. And then what we did is leverage generative AI to build sets of relevant content so that when someone comes, they can type in a phrase. It'll be matched up with a phrase that we've already sort of vetted so that we don't have people typing in, I want to hurt my boss, I want to hurt myself, anything like that. And then we have identified relevant content using the generative AI tools and then serve that up in sort of a curated way in the moment so that people get, and the resources we surface are not like take 2 weeks and work through this skill, but they're like, here's a breathing exercise that can help you reduce your stress right now. Take 4 deep breaths, or use circle breathing, or use 4-7-4 breathing. So there's a variety of oriented around quick hits to help people address whatever concerns they might be. We've done a quick follow-on now with Ask BQ for managers. Managers face sort of a different set of concerns. And again, given what we know about managers over the history and what we've seen managers search for in product, we provided in a very similar approach, an I want to or I need STEM in what we call Ask BQ for managers. Again, completed with a variety of phrases, things like I want to be better at having hard conversations. And so again, leveraging tools that we already have in product, the generative AI was used to match different kinds of activities, and again, quick hit focused things to help out managers that are struggling with something right there in the moment, and they need a boost before they go into a difficult meeting, or they need a boost in helping figure out how to get their team focused given a tough task that's ahead.
Now, for thinking about the managers, how how much knowledge do they need about these issues to use the solution? Most managers that I know anyway, they're specialists in the thing they manage,
Right.
but may not be particularly expert in mental health or wellness or anything like that. Do they need to be to get the most out of meQuilibrium?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that there's no expectation that anyone is a therapist or wants to become a therapist. We're never going to put anybody in a position, a manager or someone else, of having to take care of someone's problems. And so we do mental health things. We will talk about how to be less anxious. But we're never going to tell a manager, if you have an employee that seems anxious, here's the 5 questions you need to ask. We're never going to give them a therapeutic guide to work through. We hope that the foundational things that you learn in meQuilibrium, so we always start off with prerequisite skills that help us understand. Again, meQ's evidence-based. We'll start off with helping everybody understand, manager or non-manager alike, helping them understand the connection between the way that we think, those sentences that we say to ourselves in our heads, and the way that we feel, and then ultimately the way that we behave. So all of that is important knowledge, but that's all taught in the product. We're not expecting any knowledge beyond that. And in terms of what we are doing for managers, the content in there, the prompts, it's really more about how to lead, how to mentor, how to manage with resilience, and ways to lead your team in a way that's empathetic, and less about solving mental health problems in your team. So there's really not a concern. I don't think a manager would need to be concerned about not having the right background or enough psychology classes to be able to use what we offer in there, because it's really focused on being an effective leader on your team more than it is focused on mental health management.
And how do employees react to the whole idea of, this system, this technology being involved in mental health?
Yeah, so great question. You might expect, especially when you find out or that the data that you collect in the assessment then feeds up through the organization, and that someone who's a higher up in HR or benefits or talent or somewhere does see that data. We're very clear in our terms and conditions up front that we're never going to share your individual data that is tied to your name or your employee ID. We're never going to share that with your boss. We're never going to share that with any leader. Everything that we ship up to the top levels of the organization is all aggregated. So might know what's happening in accounting, but you won't know what's happening with Jane in accounting. We find that that typically solves the problem. There's always people out there who are going to be very suspicious. Maybe they've been burned in the past. I think it's a very small minority. We have companies where we've enrolled 70% of employees in meQ, and other companies where we have like 90% engagement among the enrolled population. So while it is a concern, I think that the privacy safeguards that we've put up around that are pretty clearly delineated. And we also emphasize all these things when we launch to a population, so that it's not just, as no one, as you probably don't, I don't read all the terms and conditions that are on every website that we access. So we're also careful when we launch to a population to let people know very clearly and simply that their data is always their data. It's always private, and it's never going to be shared. And that's been successful for us, honestly, to this point.
Brad, thanks very much. I appreciate your time today. It's great to talk to you, and I hope we'll do it again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
My guest today has been Brad Smith, the Chief Science Officer at meQuilibrium. And this has been People Tech, the podcast of WorkforceAI.news. We're part of the Work Defined Podcast Network. Find them at www.wrkdefined.com. And to keep up with AI technology and HR, subscribe to Workforce AI today. We're the most trusted source of news in the HR tech industry. Find us at www.workforceai.news. I'm Mark Pfeffer.